Hi, and welcome back. As you can see, I'm down just a tiny bit today, not a ton of movement. It is the weekend, so this is all Bitcoin related, not a huge deal at all. Just 6 cents, and just as I'm saying it, popped back up to the positive today. So not something to worry about at all. Over the last week, I am down a little bit, but again, not a huge deal. A lot of those losses came earlier in last week, and over the course of, say, Thursday, Friday through the weekend, I've recouped a lot of those losses. This video, I'm going to talk about kind of the success that some of these companies that have had within my portfolio. So the biggest one I have here is Microsoft. They've reached all-time highs this week, trading just a tick under $150. That's an all-time high. Total return here is 25.80 or almost 21%. And again, that's within a couple months with just one share. So that's spectacular, and I'm really excited about that. Over the last month in particular, they've done great, up just over 7%. 3 months up 11, and if we go ahead and look at 5 years, over 200%. I believe in the last year they are up about 40%. The big reason for that is just within the last month they won a government contract to work with the Department of Defense on their cloud infrastructure. And this article I have pulled up talks about why that's such a big deal. And the reason for that is that Amazon Web Services has been the major player in this front for as long as it's existed. So as we can see right here, the Department of Defense project could result in a payoff of up to $10 billion over 10 years. The Pentagon chose Microsoft's Azure cloud for the job, saying in a statement announcing the decision that Microsoft would help improve the speed and effectiveness with which we develop and deploy modernized technical capabilities to our men and women in uniform. So sure, that's a lot of mumbo jumbo, but the big thing to remember here is that Amazon Web Services has been the major player for as long as cloud infrastructure has existed. And Microsoft is really fighting for some of that market penetration and to try to basically prove that they are just as good, if not better, than Amazon. And this article basically goes on to talk about why this is such a big deal. $10 billion is enormous in any industry, but certainly when you're working with the government and the Department of Defense specifically, these contracts are very contentious. Companies fight over these for years, if not decades. And actually in this article, they talk about the fact that Amazon is so frustrated with this decision that they are actually appealing the decision itself, citing that they believe that this was somewhat rigged or that they weren't given a fair opportunity. So here you can see Amazon is planning to file a formal legal complaint protesting the decision. They believe the deal was marred by errors and unmistakable bias. So that part is not super huge. It would be crazy if Amazon was able to file this appeal and the decision was changed, but nobody believes that that's going to happen. It's merely Amazon being frustrated with the process and frustrated with the fact that they lost this decision. So if we go ahead and look at the cloud infrastructure leaders, we can see that Amazon Web Services is used by 97% of companies with cloud infrastructure. Now, Microsoft Azure is at 35%, which is very good. They're the second market player. But Amazon Web Services is so far ahead of them that they're really fighting to kind of increase that market share, increase the penetration. And if that, at 35% right now, if they can cut into Amazon Web Services lead by a significant margin, that really could help their stock and could help them as a company as a whole. And that's why I'm pretty excited about Microsoft. I talk about SPHD nearly every week. The stock market was up this week, and that proves in SPHD and VTI, which are my two index funds. Vivint Solar didn't do a whole lot this week. They were up about 2% on Friday, but if we look at the month, we see that they're all over the place. The thing I'm most interested here is that after that last earnings call that I talked about, they have been much more stable. So they are losing money. They're trying to get these things turned around, but their stock has sort of evened out, I would say, over the last couple months, really the last couple weeks. And as we can see, it's been trading for just about 5 years. This is as far as the graph extends out on Robinhood. So they are down all time quite a bit, but again, in the last year, they're starting to get that turned around. And if we go ahead and look at their earnings calls, how they've done, they are fixing this. They are doing better. So as we can see over the last 7 quarters, Robinhood has them improving kind of their earnings and trying to get this turned around to perhaps make money. So again, losing 11 cents per share is not good, but a lot of people believe that they're capable of being in the green, of doing well, and making money in the future. So this is definitely a stock that I believe is a keeper. Now again, I've talked about most of these stocks pretty much every week, so I'll just touch on a couple of the big ones. So AT&T, trading for $39.45, up $4 on that in just about a month, so that's pretty darn good. Over the last month, we can see they're up, clearly. Over the last 5 years, they had a big downstretch, and they're moving up right now. I think that this stock has seen enough movement that I kind of want to hold my position as it is. I'm not sure that they're going to move any higher. They may. The big thing with AT&T is they do pay an extremely high dividend, so that is one to look out for in the future. Now, of course, I always like to talk about the stocks that I bought this week. So the new stock that I bought was KeyBank. So I bought 2 shares for just under $19 a piece. As you can see, up $9 on that first day that I owned them. On the month, they've been up. If we look at 5 years, they are up quite a bit. Down here in 2016, it was down to $10, $11. So it would have been great to buy then. KeyBank does pay a fairly consistent dividend, and if I remember correctly, they're paying out between 10 and 20% of their earnings every quarter. So this is one that has room for a much larger dividend in the future, and a company that, based off of my research, should continue to do well. Now, if we look at their earnings, we can see that those are increasing. Banks are fairly cyclical, so as we can see, Q1 is going to be less profitable for them. Q4 would be their most profitable quarter. So January 23rd is that next earnings call. It'll be interesting to see how they do. As we can see, this last quarter, they beat their expectations by a decent margin, so that'll be interesting to see. And the last thing I want to talk about is Bitcoin, because it's the largest holding in my portfolio, and I do talk about it quite a bit. As we can see, Bitcoin's down just a tiny bit on the day, but that's so minuscule it's not a problem at all. And it is funny, as I said that, the return is now up on the day. I'm up 5 cents, just a tiny bit, 6 cents, not much at all, nothing to look at. But if we go ahead and look at the 5-year chart again, we can see that we're on this downward trend, very similar to 2017 and 2018. But everything that I've read in logarithmic charts say that Bitcoin should be on the rise again. So I always talk about these logarithmic charts, but we'll go ahead and take a look at one. So this growth cycle that we saw in 2016 into 2017 was after the second halving. We are right here with the third halving coming up sometime in May. And this is an interesting thing to look at. Bitcoin is not halved on a time basis, it's halved on a block basis. So as we can see here, every 210,000 blocks, the reward halves. And so the estimate right now is May 14th, 2020 at approximately 3:30 p.m. So we're looking at just about 6 months on that. Is important to note. It may change by a couple days, depending on how fast the mining continues or if it stops at all. But that should be sometime in mid-May. But the important thing of note here is that these logarithmic charts have been fairly accurate at understanding and describing the movement of Bitcoin. So as we can see with this halving coming up soon, there is a belief that Bitcoin will rise again, and I believe that it will. So I've talked about the estimates being anywhere from $55,000 to a $250,000 peak this next growth cycle. Not sure exactly what that's going to look like yet, but it is something that I think is going to happen, and I think the logarithmic charts are a great proof of that. So this next peak is projected to be somewhere around the end of 2021. So still is quite a bit of time from there. These peaks have typically been anywhere from 12 to 18 months after the halving itself, and we can see that being quite evident in these 2 scenarios from before. So that's my portfolio for this week. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe and like the video. We're up to 5 subscribers now. That's a huge deal for me, and I'm very excited about that. So I'll go ahead and pan through again just to show how my portfolio is doing. Up 3% on the month. 1 year is really all time for me. That's just down over 1%, and I am fairly optimistic that I'll get that changed. So I'll be back next week, and thank you.